And the Enlightenment really got to start with Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was not an Enlightenment thinker. He was part of the scientific revolution. But in Principia Mathematica, what did he? Yeah, he created calculus. If you like calculus, his form of calculus was most people use. Kepler invented the form of calculus where it's a bunch of little triangles stacked up together. It's kind of stuff that blows up your mind. His calculus a little bit easier to use. And I mentioned deism before. We have to make sure we get this. That's, by the way, that scraggly character is John Locke. And noses are kind of hard to draw, but he must have had quite a prominent one. And since I have a fairly big one, I know what it's like. And so the thing about the Enlightenment was, let's take the ideas of the scientific revolution. Newton solved the universe. I can't describe enough what a big deal that was. It's just, I'm not kidding, it just blew people's minds. And for 99.9% of the universe, his laws apply. Okay, that 0.1%, insane, but that's another story. They didn't know about that quite yet. And natural law. Can we take those ideas of the scientific revolution and put them to society? Now, they knew people can be sometimes irrational. I know that shocks you, but they thought they could do it. And so with that, this comes up with this concept of humanism. Now, humanism, you can go back to the classics like Greek and Roman literature, but the big thing was in the 1400s, 1500s, this idea that people have power over their own fate. And what is the word for power? Sovereign. So people are sovereign. And that's where we get, I mentioned this real quick in class yesterday, the idea of deism. And the most technical, precise bit of engineering and craftsmanship of manufacturing was a clock at that time. And so deists in this 18th century were thinking the universe now, because of all these great mathematical formulas from Newton, is like a massive clock, precisely operating together. And so the creator was not an interactive God, like virtually every religion has, especially, for example, Christianity, whether Protestant or Catholic. The creator is like a clockmaker. And before the universe created, there's nothing, and he or she, whatever, the entity, is putting things together, all these mathematical formulas for the universe that will also create humans and animals and birds and frozen concentrated orange juice, put all of it together, sat back, look what I have done, flip the switch, and the universe functions, and they sit back and watch. So deism fits in with the Enlightenment, but also fits in very well with humanism. The idea that the creator created this, and now we're in charge, we decide our fate. So we don't have to have, for example, a king. Like what person wrote, we don't have to follow a king because of lack of birth. Who wrote Common Sense? Yeah. So that's how it fits together. That is deism. And most of the founding fathers were either full-fledged deists or very much influenced. George Washington was a deist. He never used the word God. He always said creator. Very consciously, creator. Creator. And you'll see elements in the Declaration of Independence. Creator. Now, some were very religious. Now, this is pre-industrial revolution. Their style of religion would have been, religious people would have been different than what we might think. But still, they were very religious. But some were very much a deist. Jefferson was accused of being anti-Christian because he was such a deist. He had to kind of balance it. So, John Locke would be a philosopher just on the edge of the scientific revolution, and many would say kind of the precursor to the Enlightenment. And he would try to justify the glorious revolution in Britain in 1689 by saying that we have certain unalienable rights that government must protect. And these rights are, of course, something bad happened. Oh. What happened? Okay, everyone relax. I have no idea what just happened. All right, we gotta start over. So when I was in school, I know it was a while ago, but I had a teacher who would say that. I think that was our 5th grade teacher. We loved her. She was great. But she would go, okay, everyone, let's get to work, have a minute to relax. And she'd go back in the corner and smoke a cigarette. Right in class, right in front of everybody. And that was not seen as as weird. I'm glad that's seen as weird. Yes, she died of lung cancer. Making that up. He's considered the father of liberalism. And liberalism means that all people have certain liberties and or rights. It's John Locke. The term liberalism works. Now, how people get those rights, what that encompasses, who will enforce those rights, that's a different story. But that's liberalism. The term conservatism would say, not. Certain people have more authority and there's a hierarchy. That term would come at the end of the 18th century, during the French Revolution. But liberalism was already used and it comes from liberty. Liberty, yes, the roots of the way the words are used today, even though people misuse those all the time. So let's not read too much into it right now. And therefore, governments are there to protect rights. And what are the rights? Life, liberty, and property. Now, property does imply wealth. Like, I'm just going to get wealth and that's a right. But wait a second, it's all about greed. It's more complex than that. Greed's an element of it. So Jefferson was a student of Locke. He loved Locke. Everyone kind of liked Locke. And not only that, Jefferson also read a philosopher named Thomas Hutchinson, who would look at this and say, this is not a right just to accumulate property, even though it's more complex. We need to make it a little bit more an idea that it's for a greater good. What would he change it to? That's where he gets it happy. So everyone, take out the Declaration of Independence I gave you yesterday. I forgot to tell you that. And let's get back to it now. Let's get to the philosophy. I'm leaving. Let me draw a map. Oh, I'll draw more. Does anybody know what MACV stands for? MACV. Remember? Huh? Military Assistance Command, Vietnam. We're doing the Vietnam War and special topics. All right, we're gonna run a MACV too. So I'm looking for a volunteer to read the Declaration of Independence. Let's read the second paragraph. We'll start right there. Okay, go ahead.
All of these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
Stop right there. What? Let me be louder. And you notice the magnets stay. Davy Crockett went nowhere. Oh, I forgot. I have a Thomas Jefferson doll. That's it. Ventriloquism time. I wrote the Declaration of Independence. Did you see my mouth move? No. I'm master. Huh? Oh, and I almost forgot too. That's why I have this Isaac Newton. Gravity. Okay, that was it. He didn't say much. He was not a man of words. He was elected to Parliament, and he only said 4 words in his entire time as a member of Parliament. Isaac Newton. Do you want to know what those words were? Yeah. Please close the window. I'm not making that up. Back to the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. Did most people, if they would have heard that, especially the elite, think, yeah, you're right. All men are created equal. That sounds good to me. No. Absolutely not. We do not hold these truths to be self-evident because most people would have disagreed with that. This is radical stuff. And yes, there's going to be holes in it. Yes, it's going to be seem incomplete. But I do not want you to underestimate the radicalism of this. This is, wow, we hold these truths to be self-evident. No one thought that. So, equality. Now, when Jefferson looked at this, he said, it says all men. What type of men did Jefferson think were equal?
White men.
White men, just white men. Now, that's still radical stuff. That's a massive step towards, and part of a massive fight towards liberty for all. But at the same time, we're skipping over half the population, aren't we? But that's still radical. Most people in the Continental Congress would have looked at this and said, no, it's not white men. Men like John Adams would have said, what type of men? White men with
Money.
yeah, property is what they would have said, but exactly right. Money, property, because they have the most to lose. Now, that's still a little bit more radical than just saying a few people born on top. But big difference, isn't it? Still a big step. But the great thing about the Declaration of Independence is it doesn't say, okay, we're now frozen in time and you can never interpret the founding document of the country differently. You can only interpret it the way that a few very relatively wealthy men interpreted it, half drunk by candlelight. The document can expand, it can grow. Jefferson did not want to be frozen in time. And so when we look at that, we can interpret it differently. And showing my bias, I see it this way. And my guess is most of you, if not all of you, see it something differently. We see all men are created equal, and it's all who's created equal? People. Yeah, people. All humans are created equal. And there are people who would still, they still disagree. So don't think, oh, we all agree. There's not a consensus. No, people don't hold that self-evident. But that's still a massive step, and that shows the power of this document. And when I was your age and younger, it was still very common when people would say mankind and meant all humankind. And I sometimes say it because that's what I grew up and those are the words I got, but I mean all people. So that's what people started to believe. It's kind of a big step. And it also says something else. Yeah, we're leaving behind a lot of people. But it's still a big start. But it also means a lot of people have to fight really hard. And what does equality mean? Now, we know means next part's going to be about rights, but it's more than that. They looked at it as two big elements. Equality of opportunity. Regardless of who or how you're born, whether you're born as an aristocrat or born of common birth. You hear this term all the time at this time called common birth. And I'll mention it again to make sure we emphasize it. It doesn't mean they're average. It just meant that their parents were not aristocrats. We're not noble. We're not royal. Just common, average, just a person, just people. Opportunity. It doesn't mean equality of outcome to most people, but it means opportunity. That is why in the United States, there are no titles of nobility. That's why in the United States, primogeniture is illegal. Primogeniture, some of you might know what that is. And what that means is that the inheritance of large inheritances don't automatically go to the eldest son. And before they did, so the noble name and the property stayed in that family name, or the one person, so it stays large. Oh, sure. A will is a legal document. They had wills and they could leave it to one person, but it's not legal. Now, yes, we're going to have kind of an aristocracy and people of wealth, but that was not the plan. The other thing is under the law. The king can't do whatever they want. You can't do anything you want. The law equally applies. These, though, are obviously ideals. It doesn't quite work that way in practice all the time. And it ignores two really big things, huge things. they didn't want to mess with, even though the people outside Independence Hall wanted this. Do you have the same opportunity in the upper class as you do in the lower class?
No.
It's a big difference. And if you plan on going to college, you probably know what I'm talking about. I don't know if you know this, but college or any higher education is what we call shockingly expensive. And it used to be relatively cheap. And in fact, that was a conscious plan to put people into debt by making college expensive. I'll tell you why. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. If you're in debt, you don't complain. You don't protest. Because you gotta do whatever you can to pay back everything. True. That was a plan. This year. Huh?
Guess who's not going to college?
It doesn't have to be that way, but yeah, it's shut up the Vietnam War. Partially, and the civil rights protest. Yeah, shut them up.
What about trades?
What's that?
What about trades?
Well, they're generally significantly more expensive than they used. But since you probably don't have to go as long, the price might not be as high. And I should add that, college, if you want to do that, it's very important, but we also have a shortage of people, shortage of workers. I mean, this is gonna be, wages are gonna have to go up for a lot of trades. And trust me, plumbers are gonna be in such short supply, it's shocking. If you want to make sure you have a job, hard job, without a doubt, boy, being a plumber, you can name your place. Yes, jobs with degrees are like that. Nurses are such a shortage of nurses. There's going to be such a shortage of teachers that it's going to be a catastrophe that no one's talking. Like 5 years, which is a catastrophe. It's going to be, and no one's talking about it. There's just going to be no teachers. Now, there's good parts and bad parts about being teachers. Someday I'll tell you about it. No. But they don't talk about class. And one more thing. Slaves. Talk about class, slaves. And who had lots of slaves? Yeah, Jefferson and many of the founding fathers. They were really worried that when they saw this equality thing, people down here, the plantation owners, the elite, they wanted on the side of the patriots might say, maybe we don't like that part. That might lead to rebellion. And so they don't necessarily deal with that. So equality is complex. It's not defined very well. We all hear it, but we're not sure we can define it exactly. I can give you like general elements of it, but there are holes. Who would like to read next? I know Ellie only read about half of one phrase, but someone else wants to read. We got lots of. I'm looking for a volunteer. Anybody? Yeah, go ahead, Zoe. Where are we at? Or that? Okay. Good, right there. Number 2, unalienable rights. Unalienable means what? Who has them? And yeah, you can't take them away. Now, it doesn't mean that you will enjoy these rights or that you might allow them to go, but they can't be taken away. And you'll notice the word, who gives these people these rights? The Creator. Doesn't that sound pretty deistic? That's deism. So that really gets to this idea that when can I do this? I don't want the power, but I'll take it. When the universe started, the rights are given, even before you're born. I think that's a little bit of predestination feel to it. But unalienable rights, everybody has it. You're born with it. But let's be clear, doesn't it kind of go back to this attitude too? Everybody has them, as in white men. But once again, this document can grow, expand. So with that, what are the rights? What's the first right? Life. So the right to life. What, pray tell, is the right to life? Now, I know being alive, we all say, and I understand why you said it, but lots of things are alive. A tree is alive. Corn is alive. Here's the big one. A cow is alive. A slave is alive. But that I had to come back to a slave is alive. Just like I got to choose. So life is more than just being alive. What is it? What about you makes you different than a cow or a slave? What do you have? Yes. So what do you do with it? They know where you're alive.
Like cows and trees, they don't have like the intellect.
Also,
Slaves do. But I mean, you're one more step. Yeah. And what do we call that when we're controlled and we got reliant upon somebody else? Sovereign works, autonomy works. They all are correct. Yes. Agency works. Now we're getting to what they would have said, even though every one of those are exactly, they're good points. They would have said, I'm not relying upon somebody else. I am what? Independence, what they would have said. Even though everyone you said is good, they're sentient, you know, but I can do something with it. That also tells you something about their attitude towards slaves. Yeah. They're independent. And agency, so everyone said we're right. They would have said independent. We're not dependent upon somebody else. Is that where they can work with our children? And you're just at the age where you're coming out of that.
I think life is like an electric farm.
No, remember, alive is not the same as life. The right. You will soon be independent. And in many ways you are, you're breaking away, and that's the way life is. And you're also the smartest you'll ever be for the rest of your life. Oh, I'm just warning you. Independent, big one. What's the next right? Relatively new concept, came from much what they saw with American Indians, liberty. Now, liberty is what? Now, it's freedom, but it's more than freedom. Freedom implies you can kind of do what you want. You can't do what you want. There are controls in liberty. You can't just walk around and do whatever you want. You can't walk around and just steal stuff from people. I mean, I guess you can, but there are limits. What controls you? What's that? Exactly. It's freedom of conscience. Or as we like to say, conscience. Freedom of conscience. Because think about it for a second. Those of you who can drive, I guess most of you drive, but you drive. And who's ever been driving and the speed limit's 25 and you go 26? What? You bunch of scoundrels. Huh? Yeah. Aren't there laws? Oh, interesting. And you also decide, you make a little calculation in your head. 26 probably isn't going to hurt anybody, right? Or you're like, I don't care. Here comes the school, hit the gas. Everybody thinks laws control you. No, laws don't control you. It's your conscience. You decide whether or not to obey laws, don't you? You decide that. You might make a calculation, boy, if I'm caught, I'll get in trouble, or I know it's wrong. But you make these decisions. And it's amazing how you can, if your conscience is in such a position, you can rationalize doing lots of things. You have that control over your life. You decide. Even if I tell you, in class, no, you still have to make that decision. Laws, your parents, freedom of conscience. So You don't have freedom of conscience unless you're independent. If you're reliant upon somebody else for your life, you don't have freedom of conscience. Because they can, if you're reliant upon them for your survival, they control you. And they can say, oh, you really want to do that? You want to eat tonight? Do what they say. So you don't have liberty unless you have life. That is why Thomas, well, I jumped the gun. And what's the last one? Pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness. Boy, my writing is getting worse and worse every year. What does that mean? Yeah, you just wait. Yes.
Doesn't it mean that like you have the right to do your best to like find happiness, but it doesn't like mean that you're guaranteed?
On the right, exactly right. But what's happiness? I mean, first off, you get to decide that. What's the most valuable piece of property you have, which also will affect whether or not you will find your own happiness. What's the most valuable thing you have? All of us have. What's the most valuable thing we have?
Oh,
You're right. It's different for everybody. So what's the most valuable? No. Everybody, it's different, but we all have it. Another right. Everybody has abilities. And every ability is different, but we all have them. There are things we're good at and things we aren't. The pursuit of happiness, to find that happiness, is to go as far as your abilities take you. Everybody has different abilities, but we all have something. I hope. As far as your abilities take you. Therefore, you can find your own happiness. And doesn't that fit in with equality of opportunity? We can find that. Now, of course, that implies that society has to be equal and open and transparent, and we have to know what each other are doing. And that doesn't quite exist all the time. Like, all the time. But as long as you don't do what? Let's say my best ability is to take a hammer and beat people over the head and steal their money. I'm really good at it. I mean, I come behind and you think I'm there, bang, right? You didn't even know I hit you with a hammer. That's how good I am. What's the problem with that? I'm depriving somebody of what? Let's get right to the main element. I'm really depriving them of their rights, aren't they? Of every way. So you can go as far as your abilities take you as long as you don't do what? That's it. Don't infringe on others. Don't infringe on others. That's why there are laws. That's laws. So we lay it down. Okay, this is how you can't infringe on others. Of course, we'll disagree. This is a gray area as everything is, but that's it. Except for one more thing. Property is a key element about this. Property fits in with all three. But why property? If you have property, so let's say you have a farm. I'm just throwing something, you have a farm. I'm taking like 1700s. The goal of people in there was to get that little piece of land, call your own, and be an independent farmer. Let's say you're an independent farmer, but at any time, the authority, the king, could take your land off their land anytime they want. They can take everything you have. Take your animals, take your crop, take your house, take your land, take your family at any time. Your property is not secure. Do you have life? Do you have liberty? Can you go as far as your abilities take you? And that is why property was in law. Property has to be secure. If there's no legal restraint to having power, whoever's in power, take your land, you're not the truth. So let me ask you a big question. Let's say you have a job and work for something called a wage. Are you free? Do you have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Thomas Jefferson would have said, you are a slave. Because if you were for a wage, wouldn't the person who has the wage, is that how you live? Wouldn't they say, you want that job and have enough money to feed your family? I don't want you to vote a certain way. Can't they deprive what you're going to do because you have to work for somebody else? And therefore they have the machines, for example. Now, I'm not saying it is that way. This is going to be really controversial. And most Americans are going to fight like hell against the wage system. And they will be beaten to submission to what they accepted. And now we all accept it. But it's a very controversial issue. Jefferson would have a name for them: wage slaves. Now, we hear it seems a little foreign. But this is pre-industrial revolution. Our world's going to be created. It's not around yet. Yes. Now, the wage system that we all just accept hasn't even been created. It's just starting in Britain when they wrote this. The world is about ready to blow up. And they have no idea what's coming. Literally, they have no idea what's coming. Let's get to 3. Who would like to read next? I'm looking for a volunteer. Go ahead. You know where we're at?
We are at happiness, yep.
Yep, read her after that.
Oh, we're after that.
Right, at that.
Oh, okay. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
Right there. Deriving their just power. Yeah, I know it's one of those weird, and also the print is very small because you're young and or spry. Yeah. Some are both. Some are one or the other. Okay, this is a key element. This is a really big element. Now, this will be called by future philosophers, soon to be called political scientists, government, the social contract. Locke did not call it this. Jefferson did not call it this. We're calling this because we are. Also, Rousseau wrote a book and talked about this, but that's another story for some of you probably know. I've heard the name Rousseau. Rousseau's interesting. So, why are there governments? Governments have one job. Governments are there to secure rights. That's the only job of government, to secure rights, to guarantee your rights. Now, some of you might say, wait a second, aren't they supposed to like protect us from foreign attack? Why protect you from foreign attack? So a tyrant doesn't come in and take your rights and maybe enslave you. Or whatever that might be. That is the right. The basic element, nothing else matters, the basic element of government. And who gives power to the government?
People.
And so the people are, and let's get to that word, are sovereign. The people are sovereign. The people have power. Sovereign. So, regardless of the type of government, the people ultimately have power. Now you might say, wait a second, what about a dictator? Dictator rules and decides by fiat, by whatever command they make. Sure. But dictators have the same power if the people allow it. If the people don't want a dictator anymore, it can go very bad for the dictator. They get murdered all the time. And so they have to do things to keep, maybe not everybody, but enough people happy or accepting that they stay in power. Every dictator in history has done that, has looked out for certain people. And you can look at it. In fact, they'll pick out like certain chosen people. It's a very common thing. But they keep some people. A big thing is either happy or protected. It might not be the best form of government, but it's better than nothing. It's the same thing all the way to a republic. The people are sovereign. And therefore, that whole divine right thing, no. God, we gave them right. We gave up a little bit, so we secure our rights. So what's the next thing? We are on from the consent of the governed. Now we need another volunteer to read. We're getting good at this, aren't we? And I'll gently stop you. Looking for another volunteer. Yep. Go ahead, Judge. That, another that.
Powers in such form. To them shall seem not most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Good, right there. So, if governments infringe on people's rights, if government infringes, what must the people do? The people have got to change it. Now, this could be a new revolution. This could be a violent revolution, overthrowing the government, a coup, bloodshed. It could be an election. It could be just changing the form of government. It could be writing a constitution. If government infringes on rights, if government infringes on rights, I just didn't bother to write down the word rights. I got tired. If government infringes on right, people can change the government, something totally different. Or just a minor change. It could be revolution, it doesn't have to be. But the people must change it. Nobody else can change it for you. And those in power won't do it for you. Unless you make changes. I mean, we will see some of these changes in on our government. We see it with the Constitution, where it's kind of a backtrack from democracy. We'll see it with a big expansion of democracy and things like the Civil War. It's a radically different government will come out of the Civil War. Even though it's the same Constitution, they radically changed things. We'll see those kind of changes during the New Deal in the 1930s. We'll see it in the 1960s. We'll see it again relatively recently. Who knows what's coming? And so with that, safety and happiness. Who would like to read next? Another new volunteer. A new one. Thank you, Josiah, for stepping up to the plate. I really appreciate it. Calm down next time you volunteer, though. Prudence. Prudence. Right there. And so the whole point about that was this. All right. Don't do it just because you're mad. You better have a real reason. And the other part is, you know, it's amazing what people can take. They'll take little infringements on their rights, especially if they feel protected. And so that's kind of the slippery slope argument, but you know, we'll take certain things, especially like in times of national danger, of threat from abroad, war, revolution. We'll take little things. And so that's the point about that is, hey, we're not doing it just because we just happen to be angry. We'll show you. And so where are we at here? Accustomed. So we're at but when. Another volunteer, or should I pick a volunteer? Should I volunteer somebody? Go ahead, Anna.
Designed to reduce them under absolute
Despotism, yeah.
despotism. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their people.
Right there. By the way, usurpation is just basically the taking of rights. That's literally what that means. Despot. A despot is one person or one group of people leading it. Comes from ancient Greece. And so, if that happens, it is the duty of the people to change government. But how do they know if the rights are being infringed? Paying attention. The people have to be, that's supposed to be an arrow, vigilant. The people must be vigilant. They have to know what's going on. They have to pay attention because nobody will do it for you. You must do it for yourselves or as a group of people together. If you're on your own and not paying attention, they will not do it for you. And obviously those who in charge, if they're infringing on your rights, are going to say, no, we weren't infringing on your rights and you're a traitor. And so there's a big risk involved here, but that's why you have to pay attention. You have to. When you're in a republic, you have to be a good citizen, because if you count on somebody else to do it, well, there is something about power, and they predicted it then, and we can see it now. What does power do if one person holds too much? Yes. And it sounds a little pithy, but yeah, that's kind of the way it is, isn't it? I would never be that way, but there are people out there like that. Like when I'm grading your assignment and I'll look up about the way you're looking at me and just arbitrarily give you bad grades, I would never do that. Which, by the way, that movie Gaslight is a good movie where that comes from. It's a good movie. Huh? Oh, you did? That's cool. I've not seen the play. I've seen the movie. You watched the movie? Really good actors. 46? I'm trying to remember the year. So with that is it. That's the meat of it. Pretty amazing document. And the thing about this is, here we're citizens of the United States in here, most of us, I assume all of you probably are, but you know, but wait a second. The thing about this document is that this is something, okay, they just wrote it down there. No way they thought it would be this long lasting of a win. But people around the world are going to look at this and say, wow, they actually took these kind of philosophical ideas and took it to say this is the basis of the state. A country based upon equality, never been done. Rights, never been done. Obviously, this is the way things going, but we said, no, we have this right because of the social contract. It's never been done. When people around the world are going to look at this Declaration of Independence, it's going to be, they're going to look at it with envy. This is something special about the United States. Now, I saw a couple phones out. I'm still talking. I don't want a phone out. This is what people are going to look at all over the world. The French Revolution, they looked at the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson would say, this is my revolution. Revolutionary movements after World War II, they're going to get rid of colonization. They look to the United States as being an example. Now the United States is going to do things down the road that are going to make them very disappointed in the United States. We'll get to that, things like Vietnam, but that's another story. But as citizens of the United States, this really is something to be proud of. Yes, it left out people, but it was an important building for them. This is a pretty big deal. Tomorrow. Oh, so we're independent. A couple of things I'm going to tell you about. And the British are gone, right? 30,000 British troops and nearly 1,000 ships right here, just getting ready to sail. Things might change pretty quickly. Tomorrow, a Christmas celebration. Yes, it'll involve Germans. Rest easy. Germans are coming. Yeah.
The Christmas.
Truce?
Yeah.
That's World War I. But good.
We have a question.
Have a good day, everybody.
See, I'm twisting.
I don't know. You're welcome. Have a red. Good job today. It's actually kind of a big deal today. Felt bad with people who
Is it
missed.
gonna be walking behind the Delaware? Not now.
Yeah, I'll be just, yeah.
Wait. Is it gonna be Washington crossing the Delaware tomorrow?
I don't know. Could be.
Well, that would be Christmas Eve, didn't it? Yeah.
Christmas Day.
Don't even.
And the day after. But you're right, you're right, track.
Okay,
Well, I gotta draw the line right here in the sand.
I'm so sorry.
What?
Okay, I might not be here tomorrow. I'm not entirely sure yet, because I'm to get my work done,
Okay, no,
and I don't know how long it's gonna take.
if you're here or come, if you have to come like us.
Okay,
And
so,
I'll record it if we had. Minutes. To don't. It's really, I just do it, I do the quizzes just for reward. I make them. We might have a quiz tomorrow. To be honest, I just. Be on the first step, 201 to 201.